Welcome to the Chicago Architecture Center. As one of the largest nonprofit cultural organizations in Chicago, we share the stories of the city's architecture with more than 500,000 guests and students annually. Our mission is to inspire people to discover why design matters. We do this through youth education, including teen cohorts, girls build camps, engineering fest, and field trips. Through civic advocacy on topics from historic preservation to sustainable construction and affordable housing. Through discussions and workshops which empower citizens to become part of the conversation around the built environment. Through exhibitions at our Riverfront Center that inform and inspire. And through architecture festivals, including Open House Chicago. And of course, through our world-famous tours, by boat, bus, train, or foot. Supported by more than 400 volunteer docents. The CAC honors Chicago's rich history, creates dialogue on current issues in architecture, and helps shape our future. We hope you're inspired to take action to create the communities we all want and deserve, and to discover why design matters. This is the Chicago Architecture Center.
Good morning, everybody. Now I know you can. Welcome to the Chicago Architecture Center. My name is Adam Rubin, and I am the CAC's Senior Director of Public Engagement. And for a few hours a month, I'm also a member of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. And on behalf of the CAC, we are pleased to host our friends at Preservation Chicago for the announcement of the Chicago 7 Most Endangered Buildings of 2026. The CAC's mission statement is to inspire people to discover why design matters. Our programs cover a wide swath of the city's built environment, ranging from the early evolution of the Lake Michigan shoreline and trajectory of the Chicago River to the rise of the first Chicago school commercial skyscrapers in the late 19th century to the newest developments and city planning initiatives that shape our city today. Upon the occasion of the CAC's 60th anniversary this coming spring, this is a unique time for us to reflect back on where our organization started, as a group of concerned citizens coming together to save the historic Glessner House from demolition. It is from the seed of this early preservation initiative that we grew to become the architecture center we are today, with an architecture-focused river cruise and walking tours known throughout the world, festivals like Engineering Fest and Open House Chicago, and a full calendar of community-led discussions in our lecture hall spotlighting how good design that is built to last for generations, uplifts the daily lives of all Chicagoans. Our community of members and volunteers, our passionate staff, and especially our tour docents drive this message by championing the buildings that give Chicago its unique character and sense of place. But our commitment is not just to our city's most beautiful buildings, but to the people who design, build, steward, and fight to protect the places that matter most. It is in this spirit that we are proud to offer our stage to Preservation Chicago, who for 25 years have highlighted the historic buildings and sites most at risk of demolition and mobilized public and stakeholder support to save them. Thank you for attending this afternoon, whether you are here in the room or watching remotely. If you like what you see today, I encourage you to visit architecture.org to check out some of our other programs that are coming online this spring. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage the Richard H. Driehaus, Executive Director of Preservation Chicago, Mr. Ward Miller.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Adam, for that wonderful introduction. I'm Ward Miller. As mentioned, I'm the Richard H. Driehaus Executive Director of the nonprofit organization Preservation Chicago. We welcome you both in person and online, and I understand we're having some live streaming issues, which is unfortunate, but to all present here today in the auditorium at the Chicago Architecture Center, as well as those that can see us online, we want to welcome you. This is our 25th year, as Adam just mentioned. 24 years of, for 25 years of operation, 24 years of announcing our Chicago 7 Most Endangered Buildings program, and that is really one of our largest audiences throughout the year. And we're really honored to say that with the exception of the little snafu, we had over 570 people registered for today, 150 in the hall and over 420 online. So hopefully we can adjust that issue. For 25 years, we've been working in tandem with our preservation partners and all of you to recognize and protect buildings of great merit, architecturally, historically, culturally, and to also engage in protecting our historic built environment, while also building upon those values and cornerstones to grow a healthy community. And in honor of our 25th anniversary, we hope to kick off the year with a number of tours and programs and lectures that many of you will be invited to. So we wanted to let you be aware of that. We also, as I mentioned, this is our 24th year of presenting our Chicago 7 Most Endangered program, highlighting and spotlighting buildings facing an uncertain future in Chicago and providing this in a public forum, which we feel is so important. We also want to recognize and thank our event hosts and partners, the Chicago Architecture Center, including CEO and President Aunt Eleanor Gorski, Michael Wood, Adam Rubin, Ian Spula, Emnet Barachiazno Nodozi, and others here today supporting this effort. We couldn't do the important work that without the support of many foundations and individuals and donors much like yourselves, as we offer our work all pro bono. With that said, we'd like to acknowledge the following foundations and donors that include the following: the Richard H. Driehaus Foundation, the Alpha Wood Foundation Chicago, the Mary Ellen De Matteo Foundation, the Tawani Foundation, the Riva and David Logan Foundation, the Arthur C. Nielsen Jr. Family Charitable Trust, the Lake Effect Fund in honor of Gertrude Lemp-Kurbis, and the Lemp-Kurbis Trust. We want to thank all of you for your support, and for those foundation supports. Also to our Preservation Board of Directors, including our Board President, Brad Suster, our Vice President, Jacob Kaplan, Board Secretary, Kathy Bond, and Board Treasurer, Stuart Berman, in addition to our members at large, including Jack Spicer, Andrea Reed, Joyce Jackson, Charlie Vins, Diane Gonzalez, Joanne Jesus, many of who are with us today. And special thanks to our Preservation Chicago staff, including Adam Natenshin, our Director of Operations, Kathy Bond, our Director of Events, who helped to organize today's program, and Debbie Dodge, our Director of Development, Yuki Lee, our Director of Development, Yuki Lee, our Research Associate, and Ryan Sholglassian, our Archives Associate. So let's begin the Chicago 7 Most Endangered program. So, since 2003, excuse me. We're still having some technical problems on YouTube. It's unfortunate, but a reality. So moving forward, we just wanted to mention, since 2003, the Chicago 7 Most Endangered has sounded the alarm on eminently and threatened and historic buildings and community assets in Chicago to mobilize the stakeholder support necessary to save them from demolition. And to honor our 25th year, we wanted to share with you some of our highlights. These are two buildings on State Street, the 16-story Century Building, the 22-story Consumers Building. These are owned by the General Services Administration, or GSA. Many of us realize that these were threatened with demolition, and a $52 million congressional U.S. earmark to demolish them. Were you live? Thank you. And these two buildings have been landmarked in the last year, and we're grateful for this support. These are two of the last constructed buildings of the Chicago School of Architecture. They're located at State and Adams, so 202 and 220 South State. They've been empty for almost 20 years, but we're really hopeful that we will see a reuse of them soon. And then buildings like the Thompson Center. This was one of our Chicago 7 for 4 years straight, and we had been working on this with some of our preservation partners for more than a decade. But this building is now being repurposed by Google with a developer team that is really fantastic, and the building is being revisioned. However, you know, it's really amazing that we still have it, because this had the potential of being another Block 37 for a number of years, and this will now be Google's Midwest headquarters. It's saving the general shape of the building, the plaza, and the 17-story atrium, which is really an amazing space. And then places like St. Adalbert Catholic Church. This was closed by the Archdiocese a number of years ago, and we have, it was a Chicago 7 Most Endangered for 4 years. We had been working with the community preservation partners, the Archdiocese of Chicago, for almost a decade. But we finally got this building landmarked, and we actually had the consent of the Archdiocese to finally landmark this building, which is so important to the Polish and Latinx communities of Chicago. And when this was before the Commission on Chicago Landmarks in the City Council chambers, I want you to know there was not one available seat. That's how many people really thought this was such an important structure to their life, their livelihood, and their history. And then some other quick saves. This is at Chicago Union Station. As you recall, they were going to add a very tall building on top of this long ago, and then the most recent iteration was a 7-story building. We were able to intercede in a positive way and get the 7 stories transferred over to the new BMO tower just across the street, which is same affiliate, same developer affiliate. Cook County Hospital, Lathrop Homes, this is a public housing project on the northwest side. Rosenwald Apartments on 47th Street, the Chicago Motor Club building, Metropolitan Church are just a few of the highlights, along with the Lou Palmer Mansion, the Laramie State Bank, the Warner Brothers Storage Building, Agudas Ahim Synagogue, the warehouse where house music was born, and the Rotunda building at O'Hare Airport, designed by Gertrude Kurbis, who was a woman architect facing incredible challenges and designed this incredible round building with so many functions. It's still a remarkable structure that will be saved as part of O'Hare's expansion. And then the American Book Company, the buildings along the Milwaukee Avenue Historic District in Wicker Park, the New York Life Building, which is now the Hotel Gray at LaSalle and Monroe, IIT's main building, Promontory Point, a long-time preservation effort, which is now landmarked, including its stonework, its limestone revetments, and of course the Harper Theater. So we want to begin our new Chicago 7 list today, and believe it or not, there's more than 7. It's a 7 plus 1, and we have a thematic district, so we might actually be celebrating 25 buildings for 25 years. So we started off with the Art Institute of Chicago, and this is the Chicago Stock Exchange Trading Room and McKinlock Court. And as many of you know in this room, this was a building that really reignited the preservation movement in Chicago with its demolition in 1972. Of course, the idea of protesting the demolition of a historic building and putting that in the public eye really occurred in 1960-61 with the demolition of Adler and Sullivan's Schiller building, later known as the Garrick Building and Theater. And then 10 years later, this building was threatened with demolition. And its demolition, its threat of demolition started many of our partner organizations, including Landmarks Illinois, and later on Preservation Chicago. So what's the deal here? This room was deconstructed from 30 North LaSalle, the old Chicago Stock Exchange building, and it was moved over to the Art Institute beginning in 1972. This building was salvaged as the trading room and the building were being demolished. There was a commitment from the Art Institute and its trustees and board members to accept this building as part of a bicentennial building to honor in addition to the Art Institute of Chicago. And unfortunately, the Art Institute is planning to expand, and they want to expand on this site, which threatens this room for the second time, which would really be a great tragedy. This really would undermine Chicago's efforts to protect its historic buildings, and it's really an opportunity to come together and encourage other ways of expanding this museum, and particularly to the two railroad trenches that were the former Illinois Central Railroad. Currently Metro Electric lines run down there, along with the South Shore line. But remember, when the Art Institute first built Gonzales Hall, that bridge that connects to the Art Institute in 1916, there were freight yards and freight cars that were also going through that space. Now that's been really reduced down to commuter railroads and a little executive highway, if you will, to take you from downtown to McCormick Place. We think this is the natural place to expand the Art Institute and its collections. So with that said, the Stock Exchange Trading Room is in the crosshairs of uncertainty and potential demolition. We've had several meetings with them, and just to share with you, last year this was going to be one of our Chicago 7. We went to them, we talked to them, and it was determined that we should hold it for another year, this year, and give time and space to have discussions and to encourage other ideas and plans. We were under the impression that this was done quietly, and then this was going to be a fait accompli, so to speak, and we are now moving forward to encourage preservation of this really amazing room that you see here, and to save it from a second demolition or deconstruction. This room can be a useful component of the Art Institute of Chicago. We're encouraging it to be landmarked along with the Stock Exchange Arch. There's portions of the Art Institute facing Michigan Avenue that are already in the Michigan Avenue Boulevard District, a Chicago landmark district, and we're encouraging that the Art Institute in its wholeness on its exterior and some significant interior spaces be protected from this kind of these rash moves, if you will. Also in the crosshairs was McKinlock Court, this beautiful garden that we all have dined in or have seen a jazz concert there, anchored by the Carl Millie's Fountain. This is by Coolidge and Hodgdon in 1924. This was an outgrowth of Shepley, Rutan, and Coolidge, who did the original Art Institute building from 1893, the Cultural Center, and other buildings. And of course, they were an offshoot of H.H. Richardson's firm that designed the Glessner House that Adam referenced earlier, the Marshall Field Warehouse demolished, and the McVeigh House. So originally, the building was proposed for this space and the trading room. We now understand that they are deciding that maybe the space can continue being what it is, but we've seen some really terrible things happen with the Roger Brown House in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, where the Roger Brown studio and home and its collections were sold to a museum in Wisconsin. The building was put up for sale, and fortunately, groups of preservationists got together to landmark the building, but it was literally facing an uncertain future as well. So we really would like to see McKinlock Court and the Chicago Stock Exchange Trading Room both preserved. And I want to share with you that we are going to announce a change.org petition that will be released tomorrow to encourage the preservation of the trading room and to be able to express to the Art Institute and all the stakeholders that this really is an important asset to Chicago and to the Art Institute, and it should remain in situ. More pictures of the garden at the Art Institute of Chicago over time. This is with the Walter Netsch addition that you see sort of on the second floor of the building with the Carl Millie's Fountain. Really a beautiful space. That's really a respite from seeing lots of art, beautiful exhibitions, reading lots of text. Our next Chicago 7 thank you. I think that's the only time we've ever had applause in this room for Chicago 7 Most Endangered. So really a special time. So thank you all. Our next one is something you wouldn't expect to see. This is our Chicago Bridges and Tender Houses that are along the main channel of the Chicago River. It's North Branch and South Branch, tender houses and bridges. And they appear to be in better shape than they really are, but we're really needing attention. We're losing some of them. Some of them are being replaced with facsimiles. That's all going in a good direction, but we need CDOT, the Chicago Department of Transportation, and the Illinois Department of Transportation to work together with preservationists to really repair these buildings. This is the Chicago Avenue Bridge and Tender House. This tender house is being demolished as we speak. And this is one of the first of them that were part of the City Beautiful movement. Before these buildings were constructed, these were more utilitarian structures, the tender houses and the bridges. And we in Chicago own the largest collection of bascule bridges in the nation and perhaps in the world. And here you can see one of my favorites, which is the LaSalle Street Bridge. And you can see the amount of damage and checking to the stone, and of course the lack of paint and maintenance. It's really tragic because these are sort of opening arms to welcome our visitors and our citizens to downtown Chicago and to all the neighborhoods around the city. And we're really seeing that these need to be cared for better. Here's one that's on the South Branch, and you can see the amount of deterioration that's going on here. So we really want to see these buildings protected. We want to see them landmarked, and we also want to see an investment in these structures. And of course, the Michigan Avenue Bridge, also known as the DuSable Bridge, is a landmark, as well as Cortland Avenue, which is being repaired as we speak. And those are the two landmark bridges, if you will. And these are iconic to Chicago. I just remember the United Airlines commercial where they would show all the bridges opening up, sort of welcoming people to Chicago. And here we are sort of letting an incredible resource be squandered. And even at the Michigan Avenue Bridge, you can see the amount of deterioration, lack of tuck pointing, the need for cleaning the stone. So we really want to encourage in a very positive way all parties to work together towards a good outcome here. Our next Chicago 7, is St. Mary's Church. This is in the Riverdale community of Chicago versus the Riverdale suburb of Chicago. And if you go any direction from this church, you end up in either Dalton or the Riverdale suburb. But this is a small community that's faced a lot of disinvestment over time, especially the last 50 years. And of course, this is the church and the school where our Pope, our first American Pope, who just happens to hail from Chicago, spent much of his youth and was very inspirational to him. And you can see, forgive me. You can see that it's a really lovely church from the 1950s, but it actually dates, the congregation dates back to the 1890s. But here is St. Mary's, the Pope's Church, at 137th Street in Leyden, and it was closed by the Archdiocese as part of a consolidation in 2011, and we're really happy to say that we have a really great relationship with the owner. This is an image I took. I couldn't resist putting it in. Papa Leo number 14 with an image, and this was drawn by a number of children who visited Joe Hall, the current owner. And Joe has got some amazing ideas and plans for this, but it still faces a lot of challenge, several owners in between, and years of vacancy and neglect, but a really wonderful church that could be so inspirational for this far, far south side community of Riverdale. And you could live in Chicago your whole life and perhaps not even see this area because it is a corner of Chicago. But here you can see one of the holes in the roof, and then this is the 1957 church with a hole in its roof, and you can see its vacancy in this image. But there are other buildings. There's 5 buildings and numerous additions that comprise this site. This is looking towards what would have been originally the front of the church or the altar. And then looking back towards the entry. And then an image of the art glass window with the statue of Mary and her veil peeking behind. And then this is one of the other buildings, and Joe Hall has committed to doing a lot of restoration work here, but there were some storms and some vandalism that came into play. This was the original 1917 church by Herman Gall. Gall did a lot of Catholic churches in Chicago, and this was a combination church school when it opened in 1917, 1918. And a little detail of what would have been the front entry to the building. And some other images. This has been the image that you saw from 1917 continues to be added on to, so it's almost like a telescoping of buildings. You have the 1917 building 1918 building, and then you have this middle structure, if you will, with the bell tower, and for a while that was also the church, and then the church moved further to the south in 1957 with the iconic image you saw earlier. So we really want to see a reinvestment in this building, but Joe and people that are coming together really need everybody's help to make this a permanent shrine, an oratory. There are so many different possibilities for a church that has just come about in the last 9 or 10 months since Pope Leo was elected. And then we get into our Chicago labor union halls that we see around Chicago. And of course, Chicago was an amazing union town. You think of the Haymarket riots, you think of the 8-hour workday, you think of the Pullman strikes. So much labor history, union history is part of our city's fabric. And here's the Workers United Hall on Ashland Avenue near Van Buren. And this was for sale. It was listed for sale. It's an amazing structure. We really need to sort of honor and maybe even give these a landmark designation. Adam, I'm sure, is in the front row, is probably thinking you've got a lot of projects for us at DPD Landmarks and the Landmarks Commission. But really beautiful buildings that really are iconic. This is the Painters District Council building on Adams Street. It's across the street from Whitney Young. It's by Carl Witzum and Burns. This is 1956, but look at this incredible ornament, and wouldn't it be wonderful to designate these buildings and to protect them, and of course work with the unions and the owners towards good preservation outcomes. And perhaps these are not in imminent danger of being threatened, but some of them do face an uncertain future. This is the Chicago Plumbers Union Hall on West Washington by James Fletcher Dennison. And some details. And the former Teamsters 710 Union Hall at 42nd and Halsted. Another lovely building from 1956 with this beautiful articulation of its fenestration, glass block, and then its carved ornament. Really, really amazing. And then we get to one that is in danger. This is the Amalgamated Meat Cutters and Butcher Workmen of North America at 2800 North Sheridan. So this is at Sheridan Diversey, and there's already a big proposal planned for this site. And this is the entrance to Lincoln Park from one direction, the entrance to the Lakeview neighborhood in the other direction. We think we can do better. There's a vacant lot directly to the north of this, and we think that's the place for the new building to go and to integrate this historic building into that fabric. And of course, these amazing sculptures, there's 2 of them that are really unique. These are the only items that are said to be salvaged and come back to perhaps the new site. So this one's in the immediate crosshairs. There's a proposal before the Chicago Plan Commission shortly, and we'd like to see this building integrated into the new vision and apartment buildings beyond. Remember, on the other corner is the Elks Memorial that we were able to get landmarked almost 20 years ago, that was unlandmarked for many, many years. And on the other corner is Mies van der Rohe's Commonwealth Apartments that we hope to landmark one day soon. So a really amazing corner, and then of course the south corners are all Lincoln Park and the beginning of that amazing Lincoln Park gateway, if you will, from Lakeview. And then buildings like the Teamster City on Ashland Avenue, another really modernist building, and why are we potentially losing buildings like this? This is the Chicago Federation of Labor building. It was formerly a Chicago Street Railroad cable car powerhouse, and believe it or not, underneath that stonework that's covering the first floor are a series of semicircular arches that cover that whole first floor, ground floor idea. And the union that was in there moved out of there in the last few years to a new building in Bronzeville, which is wonderful, but we are very concerned about this structure as well. And this is sort of the gateway to the West Loop, so why can't we look at honoring its history, its cable car history, its Union Hall history, and move forward with a new idea that would engage this into another development. And then a building that really intrigues a lot of us, and sometimes people walk past this building without seeing it, really seeing it. But this is the Chicago Loop Synagogue by Lobel, Schlossman, and Bennett of 1957. It's a remarkable building, and it's a small building on a small site. And unfortunately, this large congregation that began in the 20s as a businessmen's synagogue has lost a lot of its membership. It went from up to 30,000 or 50,000 in the 1950s and 60s to really less than 500 today. They recently had a boiler replacement that caused a lot of angst, but a really beautiful space. Here's the sanctuary, and a very forward-thinking idea, and if you will, a compliment to St. Peter's Church just around the corner on Madison Street, and to have this sort of both ends of the good book so close to each other is really wonderful. So some great spaces in here, spaces that take you away. You know, that north wall looks very much like the Wailing Wall. This window is absolutely fabulous. This is by Abraham Ratner, who is a noted stained glass artist. And this is really a feature of the synagogue. And then really an unusual approach in 1957 to create a series of ramps that take you from the ground floor up to the sanctuary, which is really on a second floor. And you can see all these nameplates of people that are no longer with us, that are remembered, and these beautiful windows also by Ratner. But a really special place that we wanted to bring attention to. And you know, here's Henry Araz's Hands of Peace, 1957. So you're seeing these beautiful hands coming together in a blessing. And for all of you Spock heroes, that was a blessing that came about. And I understand in Star Trek they use this blessing as a code, if you will. But anyway, just an amazing resource here. This beautiful sculpture that, you know, when I pass by this, I always see the word peace, and I think that's really important to remember. But a really wonderful treasure that we'd like to see landmarked, of course, and saved, and work with the congregation towards reestablishing itself. With all the LaSalle Street Reimagined projects happening on LaSalle Street and neighboring streets, there's quite a few of them. These are historic office buildings, conventionally office buildings being turned into residential. The Loop Synagogue and its congregation really feel that there's the opportunity to grow the congregation as time goes on, but we want to help them wherever we can. And then a really unusual building that a lot of people don't see. This is South Park Terrace from 1905 by Harry Hale Waterman. It's at 61st and Martin Luther King Drive. It's an amazing complex of buildings. It's very reminiscent of Frank Lloyd Wright's Francisco Terrace. And Waterman worked in the office of Silsby with Frank Lloyd Wright. And you can see so many of the Wright influences in South Park Terrace. Unfortunately, the building has been sort of mismanaged, if you will. There was a fire in here, and the city insisted that portions of the building be cleared, and it really does leave the building open to an uncertain future. When you see this doorway here, very reminiscent of Francisco Terrace, which was demolished in the early 70s, and a portion of it was taken to Oak Park, Illinois, where fragments of the building were put together again. But that's not what we need. What we really need is a South Park Terrace restored and built for middle-income people or those that are just a little unfortunate on their current front, and to be able to make this affordable housing. And so we're hoping CHA and other agencies will get involved, take control, and make this a really wonderful place as it once was. And here you can see some of the fire damage to the outside walls and the boarded up windows. And we did suggest this building, along with the bridges, as a Chicago landmark. We submit suggestions for landmarks to the city each year, and we're hoping that some of these buildings will be considered, if not all of them, for Chicago landmark designation. Here's just a detail. And of course, this is now on King Drive, but its name is derived from the historic name of the street prior to its renaming in honor of Dr. King. It was South Park Avenue, or South Park Way. And then this is a really wonderful little building just in our midst. It's at Clark and Van Buren. This is the Yukon building from 1898. This is Halliburton and Roche. Halliburton and Roche gave us all these amazing structures from the Monadnock Building addition to the Old Colony Building, the Marquette Building, and many others. And they worked for the Brooks Brothers, not the clothing company, but the Brooks Brothers developers out of Boston, creating quite a few buildings that we consider our prime triple grade A landmarks in Chicago. And yet they designed this small building. It was probably a reaction to the elevated going up about the same time. But here they are, Halliburton and Roche, really designing a small building that we call a taxpayer building. It just generated enough income so they would pay the taxes on the property and give you a little extra profit. But here's this building, probably the oldest taxpayer building in the city of Chicago, certainly in downtown Chicago, that's all glass and metal, and it's the glass area in proportion to the wall surface wall area is just incredible. So we'd really like to see this building reimagined. It's also part of an area that we dubbed Old Chinatown, because Chinatown as we know it was started here in this area. There's just a handful of buildings left. In the 1920s, there was an agreement to move it from the South Loop up to its current location at Wentworth and Cermak, originally 22nd Street. And so I think there's a great Chinese history here, an Asian history, and as the National Trust for Historic Preservation has been recently bringing all of us together to honor these early Chinatowns and the threat undergoing, the threat some of these buildings are experiencing, we thought it would also be interesting to acknowledge this old Chinatown district as well. And you can see some of the beautiful ornament here. Some of the ornament has the Chicago municipal seal, the Chicago River splitting into two, its north and south branches from its main canal. But you can see how amazingly modern this is for 1898. And at the same time, Halliburton Roche was designing this building, and ironically, you're seeing the Metropolitan Correctional Center in its reflection here. Louis Sullivan was designing the first bays of what later became Carson Perry Scott and Company, originally Schlesinger and Mayer, and ironically, at the same time, they were also designing the Williams Building, which is where we're headquartered, all happening in 1898. So you can almost see these architects looking to one another and seeing what is progressive, stretching the limits of materials, glass, steel, all these ideas that were born in Chicago primarily after the Chicago fire and made Chicago America's city of architecture. And we see so much of that in the Yukon building, but a modest building, and some of you might know it for the Skyride Tap and Bonavino Italian restaurant, but we're hoping that somebody will come along and purchase this building and not demolish it, but instead restore it. Our last one, so this is our +1, is St. Mark Roman Catholic Church. This is in the Humboldt Park community. It's really an amazing Roman Catholic church that was unfortunately closed just in the last few years. It's by Barry and Kay from 1963. Barry and Kay did a lot of our sort of mid-century modern churches throughout the city. A lot of them have been closed or consolidated, but this is really an amazing church that started off as a German church in the 1890s, and over time became really the center of the Puerto Rican community of Humboldt Park. And this is really a very interesting structure. Its plasticity, if you will, is amazing with all of these incredible forms. Look at this crowning, if you will, this finial on top of the building. Really remarkable. And it's part of a larger campus that's now for sale, including the church that you're seeing with the rounded corner in this picture from 1963, but you're also seeing a building next door from 1890, which is the rectory, and the school building from 1905. The school is now operated by a charter school, and the Archdiocese has taken it and separated it from the rest of the campus. But really a remarkable building when you see these images, and what a great cultural center, a community center this would make. And that's what the community really wants to see here, is this complex not developed for housing, but really to engage the community, to also create some green spaces around the church where you're seeing the parking lot. And they're very much in support of saving the charter school too, which was for a long time both it was the Catholic school of St. Mark's, but it was also on the lower level one of the original church buildings. So here's one of the entries from the side corner, and now you can see sort of the interior with the art glass windows. This is the altar, and this incredibly beautiful brickwork, and of course, a really unusual shape to the building. But this is probably the third or fourth church building on the site. And then, of course, it also includes this school building from 1905, which, as I mentioned, the lower level was one of the original sanctuaries for St. Mark's Church as they were reconstructing buildings. And then the rectory building from 1896. So with that, this is a collage of our Chicago 7. And just to remind everybody that once a Chicago 7, this is always a Chicago 7 till they're resolved, and hopefully resolved in a good preservation solution. And that these projects, sometimes one person's poor decision can take years, if not decades, to reverse, and that's really unfortunate. So by holding this program, we're hoping that we'll be able to engage with some sort of preservation, good preservation outcomes. We have a little video here just to remind you of what we just talked about, what was just presented. So bear with us for just a few minutes. So here's the trading room at the Art Institute of Chicago, reconstructed here in 1977 by Vinci-Kenney architects as the building on LaSalle Street was being demolished. And this room was removed to the Art Institute. And of course, Richard Nickel, the architect, the famous architectural photographer, lost his life in that room and in that building as it was being demolished. And just a selection of some of these bridges that really are in need of a lot of repairs, but really iconic to the city of Chicago. Gorgeous, gorgeous gateways to our neighborhoods, to the central city, and unfortunately languishing. And this bridge was demolished. But you can see the deterioration that happens on even those in the heart of the loop. And St. Mary's Church, this is the Pope's Church by George S. Smith. Church school combination building, later just the school building. And you can see all these telescoping additions onto this site. A real opportunity to do something really special for the Riverdale community and as far as south side community as well. And this is where we squeezed in the thematic district along with the bridges to encourage preservation of these structures. Union Hall some of these union halls are in our midst. This is one that was refashioned with an addition on top of it. Its murals were taken out and saved, but it was a huge effort to save those murals, and maybe we could do a little better. And the Chicago Loop Synagogue with its amazing sculpture, its hard glass window. This was a lighting idea to light that window in the evening hours. Of course, it's an amazing hard glass window. And one of the few Jewish institutions that are still, in our downtown area. We've seen the closure of the Covenant Club, the Standard Club. Of course, we still have the Jewish United Fund downtown, but it's tragic to see these diminishing. Of course, South Park Terrace. And you can see that lovely courtyard. This is all about quality of life issues by Waterman. Waterman also designed the Pike House, or the Watchman's House. It's in the Beverly community that has just received an award and will be restored, which we're really happy about. The Yukon building, Chicago's earliest taxpayer, still remains. A mostly glass and steel building. Only 2 stories, modest in scale by Oliver and Roche. We're really pushing the limits of what you could do with a site like this. A small building, probably meant to be temporary until they could build an 8 or 12-story building on that site, but what an amazing structure. And then St. Mark's Catholic Church and School, campus, and a real cornerstone of Chicago's Puerto Rican and Latinx communities in the Humboldt Park community. And what a great building this could be refashioned and revisioned into perhaps a community center, perhaps a library, a branch library. The community is very excited about the possibilities of all these structures. And then a collage of all of our Chicago sevens. Thank you. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of our photographers. You saw a whole litany of people that have volunteered their time and their services to document these buildings, and including Lee Bay, Kristen Brown, Sergei Krutsky, Chris Cullen, Maja Gulak, Lily Ma, Debbie Mercer, this guy named Ward Miller, I think I've heard of him somewhere, Eric Alex Rogers, and Bill Zabarin. We couldn't do this important work without all of your support. As I said, we do it all pro bono. We really rely on individual contributions, foundation contributions to support our 5-person staff. And we also want to encourage all of you to join our newsletter. Again, it's free. My wife tells me never to say this, but it's roughly 200 pages of information that is released monthly. It's called the Month in Review, so it comes out a week after the previous month is over. And if you go to preservationchicago.org, you'll find our newsletter, links to all of our sites here today, and want to thank you all for being here and being part of this program. Thank you so much. I think we've got a little time for questions. Ian Spula.
We do indeed. We have about 10 minutes.
Partner at CAC.
Thanks,
go
Ward.
get 'em.
Mnet has another mic in the back for the folks that are in the back half of the room. Have a question here.
Thanks so much, Ward. That was fantastic. Could you clarify what it is the Art Institute is planning to do with that room?
Sure. So we've been in talks with them for the last year. Again, I was mentioning that it was really one of our candidates for 2025. After outreaching to them, we really wanted to encourage a dialogue and give them space and time to rethink their ideas. They were originally planning on perhaps, this is all a proposal and in its infancy, although I understand there's a model and some other things that have been discussed, so this maybe is a little further down the road. But originally when we met with them, they assumed that we were just there to protect the Chicago Stock Exchange trading room. But when we mentioned that McKinlock Court was also of interest and was also our Chicago 7 nominee, it was shared with us that that was going to be the site of their new addition in that beautiful courtyard, which is a respite from, you know, seeing all this wonderful art and reading labels and exhibitions, being part of all that. And since then, they've said, you know, we may be able to save McKinlock Court, but the trading room is really a spot where we'd like to continue the conversation about having an addition. And we think that the addition should probably be in those two railroad trenches to the north and to the south of the museum. And of course, across the street in Millennium Park, we have bridged over that and healed that trench, if you will. And we think that building there is the way to go. Of course, is expensive. It's maybe the $1 billion solution, if you will. But you know, they're raising $900 million. So you know, I think with a little more help, they can get to that $1 billion mark. But really, that would unite so many aspects and components of the museum and create more flow rather than having to go through these two halves of the museum that are connected through Gonzalez Hall, that sort of bridge, if you will, from 1916. We think that this would really, really help with bringing people together, bringing more galleries, and expanding the museum substantially more than what they're planning. Yes?
Do you think the Guyan Hotel is beyond repair?
No, we don't. As a matter of fact, that was one of our Chicago 7 for many, many years. You might be aware of. It has been sitting empty for 20 years. It's going to take a tremendous amount of work to bring it back. But remember that these buildings, historic buildings, these 10-story buildings that you know, are really huge, also cost an incredible amount of money to demolish. You know, when we were looking at Cook County Hospital before saving that front building was a $50 million investment to demolish to get a vacant lot, and that was 20 years ago. So, you know, what are the costs associated with these, and then what is the value? What do you get out of them? So we'd really like to see the Guyan Hotel repurposed, and, you know, it could be veterans housing, it could be affordable housing. We're there to support that wherever it needs the support. We've been working with the Cook County Land Bank in the past and really hoping that we can come to some sort of solution. Yes.
The clear commitment to the Art Institute, because I remember the section of the Art Institute that was destroyed to make the modern wing. That was where the old Goodman Theater was.
Correct.
And there was beautiful stained glass and beautiful marquetry and everything that was beautiful, and was destroyed into a plain modern square. And I don't know if anybody remembers that. I remember that as a child. And it's really a mess now. And if you had pictures of what the old piece was, where the Goodman and the stained glass and the marquetry and the sculptures were immediately destroyed without asking anybody about it. And I'm concerned about the Art Institute's good faith, because what they destroyed was really a tragedy.
No, we agree with you on the Goodman Theater. That was one of our most endangered buildings some time ago, and we thought they could have worked around the Goodman. We understand that's in the past now. We do remember. It's unfortunate that they're looking at maybe removing more buildings, maybe affecting some of the gardens. Like I said, the Allerton building and maybe some of the gardens and walls on Michigan Avenue are protected already by the City Landmark District, the Michigan Boulevard Chicago Landmark District. But we are concerned, and since it's a who's who of architects that have been involved in the Art Institute over time, we really think that the entire complex should be landmarked, much like the Museum of Science and Industry. Now the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry is also landmarked in Hyde Park. And remember that these buildings, all of the museums in the park, are on land that belong to the people of Chicago. And you know, we're seeing sometimes these things get squandered. I don't know what kind of conversation we're having, but basically these lands are stewarded by the Chicago Park District. And we're hoping, and some of the buildings are owned by the Chicago Park District, so we're hoping that we can all come together, the Chicago Park District, the Art Institute, its leadership, stakeholders, and all of us as citizens to look at these ideas. And why can we landmark the outside and the inside of the Palmer House Hotel or the Marshall Field Store on State Street, now Macy's? Why can we landmark those spaces and those buildings and not consider landmarking the Art Institute and some of our really wonderful grand museums in the park? In the back.
I love your knowledge about all of this. Wow. My question is, what can you comment on the pressure that developers try to develop on old structures rather than new empty structures, or instead try to integrate the new development with the old? Thank you.
Sure. We've been an advocate for sensitive development. People sort of think that we're sometimes from the outside illusion that, you know, we're trying to sort of recognize history and keep things locked in time. But we realize that our buildings, especially our landmark buildings, and especially those triple grade A landmark buildings, need investment. So investment in these historic structures and our landmarks is development. It's the most sensitive type of development. We want our landmarks like the Rookery Building or Roosevelt University, the Auditorium Building, to be the hardest working buildings in our midst. We want everybody to have a connection to them. When you say that Carson Perry Scott Store or any of our legacy landmark buildings, the Marquette Building and whatnot, Monadnock Building, we want everyone to be able to say, I know that building, I've had experiences, I know how wonderful it is, I know how important it is to the city of Chicago and to all of us. And when, this is a personal idea, but when buildings become a landmark, I believe by ordinance, we all have a stake in them, and we all have an ownership in them. And I'm very proud when I can stand up at a Landmark Commission meeting and say, we at Preservation Chicago support this landmark designation because it now is a building by ordinance and theory that belongs to all of us that we all share. And I think that's a beautiful story. And whenever we can integrate a historic building into a new development and it's sensitively done, that can be a great bonus. And that's really a wonderful concept as well.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Ian, I'm gonna let you.
Sir.
Hi, Ward. Back to the Art Institute issue again. Can you tell us that the Dan Kiley Garden to the south of the Art Institute entrance is safe?
So this is the Dan Kiley Garden with the Fountain of the Great Lakes to the south of the Art Institute. It's really a beautiful space. It faces the Morton Wing from the 1960s. I remember when that was an exhibition space. And we understand that there may be plans for the entire complex to be revisioned. We don't know this for a fact, but several buildings could be, or there's conversation, shall we say, of a proposal that could replace many of these special spaces and buildings. And we want to encourage that the Art Institute instead grow into these 2 scars, if you will, the 2 railroad trenches that are 20 or 30 feet below our current grade, and really build over those spaces as they did in Millennium Park. And of course, they have a bridge connecting Millennium Park to the upper floors of the modern wing at the Art Institute to connect its restaurants. So why not continue that flow and encourage the expansion of the museum rather than in these other spaces? And you know, we're also concerned about Butler Field to the east of the Art Institute as well. There's talk of, you know, this is where the band shell was. There's talk of, you know, a sculpture garden going there, and how does that impact our city, our citizens? How does it impact music festivals, whether you like them or not, like Lollapalooza? You know, where do these things go? And why aren't we having broad, transparent conversations in the public realm about how our parks and how our museums function and expand? And we're all about allowing these institutions, these marvelous institutions, to expand, but I think they have to be done carefully, methodically, and with the general public.
This is not really a question, it's more of a praise in the work that you and the team are doing, Ward. It's amazing. I didn't even know the disrepair in some of these buildings that you mentioned, so it's awesome. And it really, this work that you put in and all the, just the spotlight you're bringing on this preservation, it's so huge. As I've gone to learn more about Chicago and the history that this city holds, it's really something important that you're doing. So thank you for this, Ward.
Tom, I just want to thank you, your associates, your partners, your company for your investment in some of our most important downtown Chicago buildings that have suffered dramatically from COVID, the COVID fallout, and thank you for all that you do for our city. Just so you know, this is Tom, the skyscraper guy with 200 million followers that are all interested in what he and his firm and his partners are doing in Chicago. And it doesn't just stop at the city borders or the Chicagoland limits. It extends across the oceans to Europe and beyond. So thank you so much for spotlighting Chicago and for your commitment to so many of our downtown buildings. Thank you, Tom.
Well, that's a nice note to end on. Let's hear again for Ward.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you as well to our large virtual audience that found their way to a new functioning link eventually after some technical difficulties. Great to see you.